Hello and welcome to this IBTV spotlight on considering the end early, where I'm speaking to Lucas, Josh, Kevin and Lucy about the early considerations that therapeutic developers need to be making early in these processes as we look at commercialization strategies. So we'll start off with quite a broad, hopefully easy question. As therapies are transitioning from development to commercialization, how can early decisions regarding platform technologies, processes, raw materials, and everything that kind of comes under that manufacturing umbrella directly influence the scalability opportunities and efficiency later in the process?
I can speak up first. Definitely is kind of the focus for myself and my company Scale Ready. But the one thing I would point out is just make sure whatever you're choosing as a developer has either it's already a done deal path, that it's a GMP clinical ready product, or you've done your diligence that, whatever you choose to use early on, small scale, if it is a research grade product, that there's a pathway to it, or maybe oftentimes at these companies, there's probably a sister product that's the GMP version. So just make sure you know what you're getting into before you develop a process and feel good about it, and then realize you have to change all of your reagents or tools later on.
I think that from a sort of CDMO perspective with these products and thinking about the indications that they're treating and where you will need to scale up to in the end is really important early on. And I think that it is important we make some big decisions early on, but we mustn't be scared to change those decisions if that's absolutely what's right to get the product to the patient. And I think you've got to pick a developer that's going to hold your hand and walk with you on that journey and be prepared to say, this is what commercial scale is going to look like, and we're not there yet, but we're going to get there together, because I don't think it's going to be one size fits all. We know it's not one size fits all, so we know that developers have got to adapt to what the product needs.
Yeah, I think to leverage off of that from a raw material point of view, oftentimes you may not know what the ideal donor is, but if you over-engineer the selection of that, then you effectively get a unicorn. And that doesn't scale so well because there's not that many unicorns in the world. So it's, we've worked with folks that wanted somebody with an NK donor profile that's 1 in 10,000 versus most people are in that bell-shaped curve. Well, it's a lot easier to find somebody that fits all of your characteristics if you're not doing the extreme of everything. And I understand early on, you may have to get that to understand the guard bands, but if you can back off on some of those, it's about availability and ultimately scalability.
Also, when you look at it from a more developer side, keep in mind that in every step of your process, you're looking at unit operations, but you should consider the unit operations coming after your step too. So when you're screening, think about upstream. When you're doing upstream, think about downstream.
So if we think about, Josh, if we start thinking about platform technologies, what factors should developers be paying special attention to in those early stages?
Yeah, there's always the talk of scale up, scale out. Totally agree. I think you have to be able to scale down for a few reasons, but one of the most critical ones is this area, the cell and gene therapy, is moving very fast from a science and technical perspective. And if you develop a process that works today, but you're really stuck and you're locked in and it's not flexible, or you don't have the ability to have like a scale down model you can trust, it's going to be almost impossible to try to incorporate, a new gene editing technology, or at least test it within your process. So I do think that ensuring they're scaled down, it's almost just as important for me, at least long-term success of your program, as can this scale up and out, but can you also trust your small scale work?
And how does that kind of look if you're looking at process development as well, and kind of considering that moving into perhaps manufacturing space? Is there anything additional in that kind of consideration process that should be there?
I think I totally agree. A scale down model is it's critical for being able to troubleshoot even once you're in manufacturing. If you can jump out and into the P&D labs and you've got a scale down model you can trust, and you can just move a lot faster. You don't have to go up as many cells. You can get through looking at the challenges and then incorporate that back into the manufacturing labs.
I think going one step further, you should not only consider scale from a size perspective, but also following the journey of a therapeutic. If you start in R&D, you want to be able to manipulate, you want an open system. If you go to the clinical stages, you want a closed system, but maybe you still want to manipulate things and have hands-on work. But when you go into manufacturing scale, you prefer a fully automated system where you just press one button. And that's also a thing that you should consider when choosing a system and choosing a platform, that is not only about scale, but also about open and closeness and the automation potential.
And what are some, if we're thinking about this in the concept of those early considerations, what are some of the bigger challenges that people who are trying to get ahead of these kind of planning processes, what are some of the bigger challenges or the bigger questions or the bottlenecks, I suppose, that they're coming up against when they're trying to get ahead of every step here?
I think for developers, a lot of people are spinning companies out of academia. They don't know what they don't know, so it's good to engage a really good CMC expert to support you on that journey. But listen, we're working in a cash-strapped world right now, so everybody wants to get to the next stage and they want to get there as quickly as possible, and they almost want to fail as quickly as possible as well, if that's what needs to be. So in an ideal world, we'd start and we'd think about where we're going to end up with a fully automated commercial manufacturing process, and we'd step back from there and see where we could get to. But the reality is that we're not there yet as an industry to offer that, and we're not there yet. The investment at that early stage is spent elsewhere, I think. So I think we are, as manufacturers and developers, we are aware that that's how we need to think, but the tools and technologies almost aren't there yet to support us in that.
And how about from more of a raw materials and starting materials side of things, before we even get into the tech and the process, if we're looking right at the beginning, where are some of those bigger challenges as people are looking to prepare ahead of getting into it, I suppose?
Well, Lucas already answered the question. You've got to be very aware of all the upstream and downstream dependence, right? And as a service provider of the raw materials, having a selection that works in PD and is one thing, but if you really want to scale, the not only the donor criteria has to be such that you can see that at scale, right? If you have one person in one location and you're ready to scale up, but you still have only one donor that qualifies for your criteria, it really limits the scalability. I think also some of the struggles now, clinical trials and commercialized, is ideally, it's nice to have an ideal state, but it's like, oh, I want every processing lab to be within 5 hours of driving of every collection. Well, if we don't have an infrastructure to support that yet. So while that may be a nice ideal, we're not there yet. So I think it's important to continue the communication. And while you may have desired wants, it's a negotiation, kind of like dating, right? Where you say, well, I want this. Well, I can give you this, but not this. And it's a compromise to find the best. And if both sides are open to figuring out, I think, Lucas, to your point, you'll eventually get to that, because I don't natively know what every step needs unless we have this transparent conversation about those types of logistics.
As we start looking at therapies moving closer to commercialization and also considering innovation, these conferences are all about innovation and some cool tools, technologies, ideas that are kind of coming through the pipeline. How are trade-offs between that innovative thinking and as kind of being traded off against cost efficiency, quality control, and thinking about what this innovation can look like at that scale? I'll leave that to...
I could maybe start and go back to what Lucas said earlier, but I like the concept of open systems into closed, and then graduating to automation when it's necessary. And I know it's a struggle to make these cell therapies, no matter what stage you're at. So there is the hope. I think some of it's false hope often for these early stage groups to just buy into maybe an all-in-one system that they could push a button and magically get their material out, but they haven't really studied it yet. And if you're automating too early, you're really just automating in complexity and cost really early. So it does have to be a very methodical growth to a full high throughput manufacturing process that's amenable to automation. But again, all the more reasons to find technology that can fit in all of these places, because otherwise you're completely changing your process when you graduate from early to clinical to commercial. So ideally you're finding tools, reagents, suppliers, vendors that can fulfill the whole spectrum of it, and then you're doing it in a methodical way where you're not going straight to end-to-end automation before it's really necessary.
And then to kind of bring this to a final point and kind of looking ahead and into the future, from each of your kind of respective fields of expertise, but also the different kind of areas that you're representing, what trends and innovations or kind of predictions do we have for what 2025 is going to bring in terms of what we're looking at therapeutic developers really focusing on in those early stages? Or those, early conversations, let's say, rather than focusing on the early stages?
I personally would like to see, I'm not sure if this is what I will say, but I'd like to see some new technologies like sort of come of age in the early stages, because I think some of the technology that's used in the early stages that's been historically available is not suitable for scale up and commercial, but is sort of, forced in that direction because it's the way the manufacturing process is. So it's great to see that there are new technologies here, and I hope to see them start to be incorporated into manufacturing processes.
Yeah, I'll just echo off of that from a service provider point of view. We still have folks that want us to use, I call gradients for isolation. It's like there's so many technology that can scale. So, and you're basically, from a scaling point of view, you'll take one of my staff members who have to spend all day babysitting that. I can't use magnet beads. I can't use anything to speed it up. So allowing that even early on to at least to do equivalency assays, allow us the opportunity to show, hey, this is equivalent, would also be helpful.
I'm hopeful, and I think we will see more advancements and progress in solid tumor with cell therapy and in particular CAR T. We had the first solid tumor with the TIL therapy, and I think there's more TIL coming as well. But a prediction and also again a hope, and I think kind of a reaction to the tough funding environment. I do think we've gotten more open and collaborative as an industry, because it's not as easy by necessity. If money's not as easy to come by, and we're all watching good technology fail or not reach the patients. I think more and more groups are willing to share this worked, but also this didn't work, and so the next group doesn't have to fail in the same way and waste a potentially curative therapy.
Yeah, I think I'm quite excited about emerging therapies in the field of adherent cell culture, because since now, because of good process tools, suspension culture is more present in the area. But if you look at the clinical trials, you already see some kind of 50-50 distribution. And we from Green Elephant Biotech, we focus on those adherent processes, and I'm really excited to see how that field just develops.
Fabulous. Well, thank you everybody for joining me today. And we'll catch up with you in a bit.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.